I read a book called Career Forward, published this year, that talks about career strategies from two women who've made it in the workforce, Christiana and Grace. And I'm usually pretty skeptical when it comes to career books marketed towards women, but honestly, this book had great actual tips that anyone can benefit from. Christiana is one of the co-authors, and she is a former senior partner at McKinsey and former president at Nike. So huge footsteps to follow here. And Grace is the other co-author, who is the former COO of PepsiCo and now a board member at Target. Which I'm just gonna throw it out there, I used to work at Target when I was 17 as a cashier, so I think it's pretty cool that she's on the board. So in this video, we're gonna focus on what it means to be career forward. Like setting yourself up career guardrails, learning different skills, and even how to tell if you're plateauing in your career. Then we're gonna talk about how to get full value, yes, money. And I'm even gonna show you the website that I use to find salary numbers for tech jobs, so I'm not even gonna gatekeep it. And finally, what I like to call working while female, and talk a little bit about the performance bias issues when it comes to women in the workplace, which you might as well acknowledge and be aware of because they aren't going anywhere anytime soon. Career Forward is this mindset of focusing on your career path rather than your current day-to-day job. One of their first suggestions in the book is to build yourself some career guardrails. This will help you figure out what to say yes and no to when it comes to your career. Essentially, you want to make a chart with rows of your ideal career properties on the left-hand side, and then make 3 columns, 1 non-negotiable, 2 preferred, and 3 not crucial. And then you're going to fill these all out where you fit in each one of these properties. So you can see that I put salary as a non-negotiable. In my career, I want to be well compensated, but my title, again, I'm less strict about, so it's going to go in the preferred column. And then I'm even less strict when it comes to my industry, so you could see I put that in the non-crucial column. And it needs to be remote for now, so I put that as a non-negotiable as well. Benefits, though, I highly value. It's a non-negotiable for me. Size of company, not really crucial in this point in my life right now. Leadership opportunities, on the other hand, are a non-negotiable because I've made it very vocal that I want to move up into a leadership position at some point. And job impact on the company is in the non-negotiable column because I want to have a highly impactful job at the company. I don't want to just do a day job and then log off. I want something that is a little bit more impactful. Now, when you start thinking about being career forward, right, you have your guardrails, but they also talk about this idea of career equity. So they recommend walking through this and figuring out what is non-negotiable for you, what is not crucial for you, just to figure out when you're navigating and you have opportunities, what to say yes and no to, and you can look at it and be like, okay, does this opportunity fit within my guardrails? No, then you pass on it. Yes, okay, then you think about it. Now, along the lines of being career forward, they talk about building what they call career equity. They suggest as an individual to identify a job that you want to have one day, figure out the gaps in your skill set and experience at this time, and then go and learn those skills. That is what they mean by building career equity, going and learning those skills that you need to move up. And a big part of this career equity is trying to figure out what makes you so special. They call this your professional differentiator, what separates you from the rest of the pack. Like, what extra something do you do that differentiates you from everybody else? Think of it like your trademarks. For example, put yourself in the middle of a piece of paper and think of the 5 to 6 things that you are known for. So if I do myself, my first and most important thing that I'm known for, that I want to be known for, is understanding and distilling technical information down into terms that people can understand. So kind of like organizing. The second is my software skills. Third is the amount of books that I read. Fourth, being really heavy into data. Fifth, a lot of people also know that I'm a mechanical engineer. And then finally, being a YouTuber. And all of these are my professional differentiators, but they're not all on the same level. So there might be 1 or 2 things that you're actually known for, and then the other things are kind of smaller, but still make up what differentiates you from everyone else. But also go out of your way to ask your manager, your mentor, your friends, what they think your differentiators are, because they might be different than what you think they are. Now that you know who you are as a professional, it's time to talk about building career equity in the form of networking. The authors talk a lot about how women tend to focus their time on their job and their families, and they often miss out on building connections outside of their organization. It's one thing to network inside your organization and work with lots of people inside, but don't forget to go out and network externally so you have options down the road. Now, they've had some great tips on how to network more, so let me show you how I've been incorporating that into my life. So I work at Intel, right, in the construction industry. So start with some organizations in your industry. So for example, in the construction industry, there are organizations like National Women in Construction or Business Diversity Institute, tend to have a lot of construction people going to these events. And then those events, after you go to a couple of those, see what other events they're going to. So I found another organization called OWAMI within, right, that they recommend, other people recommended to go to. So then you branch out a little bit and then think about what university you went to, right? They might have alumni events. So University of Portland, for example, that's where I went to college. So then you start going to those events. And then you think even more, like I'm in the semiconductor industry. There's a group called Semi. So let's start going to those events. Now, once you start going to those social events and kind of chit-chatting with people, having a drink with somebody, you'll start to meet other companies besides yours. Like for example, when I go to OWAMI events, I tend to meet a lot of Hoffman construction people. I also see some Skanska people there. And J. Dunn comes to a couple of these events, not just OWAMI, which I used to work there, so it's good to just catch up with those coworkers. And even National Association of Women, I met a few women who worked at Siemens, which is a controls company. And then at Semi, there's all kinds of semiconductor companies like Lam Research and a bunch of others that end up going to those events too. And all of a sudden, you build out some of these soft connections. Now granted, you need to go out often to these social events to start building real friendships down the road, but it's a great start to meet people within your industry. And here's a picture of me at the National Women in Construction social event. That was a few weeks back. We did like a painting event, so that's my painting. And that's where I met some of the women who worked at Siemens and a few other old coworkers who I used to work at J. Dunn with. And on the right, I have a picture of me at an OWAMI event where there's a few people from Intel that I haven't really talked to too much. We got a little opportunity to chat, and then another woman from J. Dunn who, again, I used to work with. So it's like, it's nice to just build those connections or revisit those connections down the road. And you are building real friendships, keep that in mind. This isn't just a transactional thing. But again, go into it with like an open mindset. This is not where you're supposed to get something out of somebody. That's not the point for showing up to these social events. You're trying to actually build real friendships. A lot of the people that go to these events, I went to college with, I've worked with. It's just nice to catch up, drink, and a lot of the times you don't even talk about work. But every now and then they might bring up an opportunity that you had no idea about, which is just nice to stay informed within your industry. Now, networking also increases your chances of professional luck. And I know it sounds weird calling it professional luck, but when you start meeting people, there are weird connections that happen where somebody knows somebody, and then this person knows that somebody, and there's an opportunity over here, and there's just like this spiral of connections, and the more people you meet, the more opportunities might come your way. So you might start getting more and more opportunities, and don't automatically say no to them, and they give you a list of what to ask yourself before you actually accept an opportunity. The first thing you want to ask yourself is, will this opportunity help make new connections or relationships? Will it sharpen a priority skill set, something that you've been wanting to work on for a while, but you needed some sort of opportunity to kind of get you motivated to learn that skill? Will it boost your reputation? Like, is it highly visible? Does it drive a notable business impact? Is this something you can put on your resume, something you're proud of, something that's exciting? And will it differentiate you from your peers, what your coworkers are working on? Is it something really cool, very different than what everyone else is working on? And if the answer is yes to most of these, then you should definitely take this opportunity. I use this a lot in my personal life. Sometimes I will get opportunities to start a new project, and I go through this list, and if it's no's down the board, I will just have a serious conversation with my manager and say, look, there's just not enough benefit for doing this project. Okay, so we learned how to build career equity, networking, building skills, thinking about your future jobs. Now, the authors also have a list of checkpoints, basically career checkpoints, to tell if this is working. Do you have career equity? Are you doing enough? Or do you need to do more work? They say to look at 4 different areas when it comes to career checkpoints. The first one being influence, your ability to influence people. Next is your compensation, your ability to make money. Next, opportunities, your ability to get opportunities. And finally, respect, your ability to get respect from other people. So let's look deeper into each of these areas and look at some questions to tell if we're doing good or not. First, influence. Are you under consideration for big events? Is your opinion decisive in decision-making? Does your company make accommodations for you? Are you looped into what's happening at the company? This is the most important question because there are side conversations. If you're getting updates at the same time as everyone else, you are not looped in. You should know months in advance. You should be having these side conversations. People should be talking to you if you have a lot of influence. Next, we have compensation. Are you well compensated? Can you negotiate your own terms of this compensation? Is your compensation growing? Is your company proactive about salary progression? These questions will help you figure out if you are valued physically through money rather than just words. Next, we have growth opportunities, which I'm considering the most important. Ask yourself if you are considered the one to watch. Do you have an influential mentor? And did somebody help you set that up? Because a lot of times, if you're considered the one to watch and the person that they think is going to take over or be the future of the company, they will set you up with a mentor. They will set you up in leadership workshops. They will start giving you almost like a special treatment if they think you are valuable enough. So again, do you regularly have access to learning opportunities? And do you have access to opportunities in general? Are people approaching you with these opportunities? And honestly, these are the toughest questions to go through, because if you're getting a lot of like, oh no, I don't think I'm any of these, that means you need to go back and build more career equity and get more valuable, and then show people that you are as valuable as you say you are. And then all of a sudden, these things will start happening to you. And lastly, we have respect. And these questions will help you figure out if you have respect general, like overall, with your coworkers and peers. So do others ask you of your opinion? Like, what do you think? Are you considered the one to go to? Do a lot of people come to you for advice? Do you have a reputation for being fair and effective? So again, if you have high career equity, you should be saying yes to all these checkpoints. But if your answer is no to a lot of these questions, there are a list of signs or signs of icy patches that the authors put together to check to see if these things are happening to you, then you probably are on a career stagnation or it's a red flag in your career. And the first one is if you aren't invited to meetings. That is your first red flag that something is up, because that is a signal that either you're not needed or that you're so difficult to work with that nobody will invite you to meetings. Another red flag is if you aren't getting invited to these special projects. So you see your coworkers doing really cool special projects, but you're not invited to like participate on them. And another sign is if your coworkers stop seeking your opinion or just don't seek your opinion in general. And if parallel coworkers are being promoted before you, and especially if they're promoted and you've been there a lot longer, that could be a sign that you've either plateaued or you aren't building enough career equity to keep up. And another red flag is if you aren't getting the time of the one-on-one meeting with your manager. Like either they keep canceling it, you have to ask them to put it on your calendar. Like if your manager is not meeting one-on-one with you and is not proactively doing it, they're either avoiding you, you're hard to work with, they don't value you. So that is a red flag that something is off if you're having a hard time getting your manager's attention. And if you feel out of the loop, again, like we were talking about with influence before, is if you're feeling out of the loop, you probably are. And lastly, the most obvious one, your performance review is really low, you're not getting the best marks or grades at your company, then that's also obviously a red flag. Okay, so how do you get back on track if any of these are happening to you? Well, they recommend this acronym called SOAR. First, focus on your strengths. What are you really, really good at that nobody else is? Second, opportunities. What opportunities are you excited about? Next, actions. What actions do you need to take to go get those opportunities? And red flags. What red flags are in the way from you getting that opportunity or taking action to get that opportunity? So anything like skill set, experience, things like that, go learn those skills so that you can go get that opportunity, right? So think about the red flags that might cause you to not be part of that opportunity or project that you want to be put on. So we've talked a lot about how to build career equity. So now let's focus on how to get full value. And yes, we're talking about money. Now, if you're a woman watching this, there's a very real gender pay gap. According to a Pew Research Center analysis in 2022, women make 82% of what men make. Part of the reason for the gender pay gap is because men tend to ask more frequently for pay increases. Companies don't set out to just pay men more. It just happens naturally over time because they're physically asking for pay increases more than women do. And a lot of women don't realize that it's pretty common practice to ask for pay increases during annual performance reviews. So the authors recommend a few different tips in order to get full value when you are applying for a job or wanting to look for a pay increase. The first tip is to read the tea leaves. Understand the timing. Like, you obviously don't want to ask for a pay increase when your company is going through austerity, for example. Another tip is a job change or just a general shift of responsibilities, because you can ask for more compensation if your job is starting to ask you to do more things. Like if you are a designer and all of a sudden they want you to make videos and that's being added to your job role, right? You should be compensated for the add of your scope of your job, right? And third is to negotiate. So you can go through negotiations. You do not have to take what they officially give you the first round. I've never taken a salary the first time it was offered to me. I've never taken the first one. I've always gone through a couple levels of negotiation. Now the key, they say, is to use your ceiling, not your floor. This is something I've been using a lot. Do really deep research on what that job pays at and make sure you understand what the market is for that, because you don't want to look, you know, dumb and ask for a number that's like not even realistic. And I'll show you the website I use. But look for that number, make sure it's realistic, it's what you should be compensated for value-wise, and use the number that you feel good at, but also have a backup on the lowest number that you're willing to take as well. And that will give you some leverage, because you'll start with your high number and then you can kind of negotiate down a little bit, and don't start with your bottom and go up, because that's just not how it works. And lastly, don't overdo it. Only go through about 2 rounds of negotiation. You should not be going into multiple rounds other than that, because then you just kind of look crazy. Now, this is the site that I use to do research on salaries. Again, this is going to be mainly for tech jobs, engineers, data scientists stuff. So I went in here and I looked up data scientist salaries, right? Now, what's great is it shows you the levels. So you can pick your companies, right? So I work at Intel, and you can pick and see what grade levels, how they're kind of negotiating, because again, a data scientist too, you don't know how it transfers. Does that transfer to a grade 7? Is that a grade 8? Like, you don't know how it transfers. So this helps you kind of show the different levels, where if you didn't have this website, you have no idea what a grade 6 is at Intel or a data scientist 2 at Microsoft means. But what's awesome is you can go into these grade levels and click them, and it says your salary package that you should be getting, and it doesn't show just your base. It has the base salary, stock, bonus, what you should be like looking for, right? Which are the 3 things you should be negotiating, right? And you can go into Microsoft and do the same thing. So you could see, you know, this senior data scientist, you know, what that package looks like. Or, you know, what if you're like kind of more entry level, then you can see your salary here, stock here. And I think Amazon's like crazy, because I was looking at some of these and I was like, holy crap, they make a ton of money. And then you can also look at other roles, because if you're kind of transferring or pivoting your career, you can see, you know, what engineering makes versus what data scientists make, and see, oh, maybe engineers don't make as much as data people, so maybe I want to go into data. But this is really helpful, especially when you're coming up with some of those numbers instead of picking a number out of like thin air. So again, do your research. I will link a few of my favorite sites below in the description, so you can check it out and kind of get a feel for what kind of research you should be doing when you're looking for a job. And now for our last section, which is the challenges that come from working while female. Now, there's a lot of talk about female ambition and how much of a negative connotation it has. So how do we combat this? Well, we need to start converting negative language into positive language when we talk about somebody's ambition, especially if they're female. So if somebody says she's power hungry, instead twist that and say, no, she's goal-oriented. She's full of herself. No, she's confident. She's pushy. No, she's determined. Oh, she's over-ambitious. No, she's just motivated. She's opportunistic. No, she's just intentional. She's bossy. No, she's decisive. So again, the next time you hear yourself saying these things in a negative way when you're describing another female and their female ambition, try to spin it into more of a positive thing. Like, think almost benefit of the doubt. Now, besides female ambition, we also kind of have to deal with these things called microaggressions. Now, individually, they may seem, oh, that's not that bad, but when you get them constantly, daily, and they're compounded over time, it can really start to erode your self-esteem as a woman. So some examples. A lot of women deal with basically being mistaken for being more junior than they are. I was mistaken for being a project coordinator a lot. So when I tell people, oh, I'm in the construction industry, they instantly think, and this has happened to me on more than one occasion, they think, oh, you must be a project coordinator. But like on the org chart, project coordinators, like they're very needed, right? But there's levels. They're kind of towards the bottom, right? In the hierarchy of things, because you have project coordinators, then you have project engineers, and then you have project managers, and then you have general managers or group managers. So it's very offensive, especially when I was working as a project manager and I'm being mistaken for a project coordinator. It's just rude and thoughtless. Like, just because I'm a woman, I can't be a project manager. Another example, being asked to hand out raffle tickets or any type of physical object, like a pass out person, like you pass things like materials out to the group. I don't know why this happens to me all the time, but they won't ask the guys. They won't ask the guy who looks like he has a lot of power to ask out or to pass out these objects, right? Like, again, like raffle tickets and stuff. They'll ask the woman because she's a woman. Another example is being asked to make things look pretty. Hey, can you just touch this up and make this look pretty? Like, okay, so I'm not in charge of the content, I'm in charge of the prettiness. Again, because I'm a woman, like, it's just so offensive. And lastly, being asked to take notes. This drives me nuts, and it follows me around everywhere I go. It has not ceased to exist. And this is when mainly a woman will take notes, and it's a big group meeting. The man is usually running it, right? A guy, higher up, will run it. A woman will take the notes, and then when she's on vacation or unavailable, it is passed to a woman. There could be 20 men on this team. And no, just because you're a woman, you're asked to sub in to be the note taker for the day. And it's like, you don't think about that being an issue until you've been in the shoes. Because it is really annoying. Because it's like, well, I want to contribute to the meeting. I don't want to be taking the notes of the men because they have the most important things to say. It's just, again, it just is this weird connotation of like superiority and gender, and it's just messed up. So again, this isn't to hate on men, right? This is just so much compounding over time, and it really starts to get to you. And then you see a woman crack, right? Under the pressure because of all this compounding stuff. And then you're like, why would that comment make you freak out like that? And it's like, it's not about the comment, it's the fact of the years and years and years of being belittled through these microaggressions. And lastly, we have classic performance bias. And again, you don't need to be a man to have this type of bias. These are things that women also struggle with when working with other women as well. So performance bias is when we tend to underestimate women's performance, but overestimate men's. So women tend to be hired based on past performance, while men tend to be hired based on future potential. So again, this isn't meant to just like hate on men. These are things that women also struggle with, but it's good to have an awareness that these things exist in the workplace. And a lot of women have to deal with these issues every single day. Now, if you like these kind of career books, I highly recommend Big Potential. It talks about the surprising factors that actually contribute to your future success. I have a whole video on it, so I will link it up here as well and in the description as well. Also, if you'd rather read about these books, so a short little summary instead of a whole video, I do book summaries. I put them in my newsletter. I have about 300 or so people in my newsletter, and I send them out every couple of weeks. So you can get an update every couple of weeks of the actual actionable tips from these books rather than watching the full video. Although I will link my full video in the newsletter as well, so you can kind of get like a reminder, if you will. So you're not trying to like jam all these books and all this stuff into your mind. It's kind of more spread out. So I will link that below on how to sign up and all that. But otherwise, I will see you guys next time.